Hey there, I'm Phil Boucher. I'm a pediatrician in Nebraska, father of six, and I am taking over Baby Center's Instagram to talk and answer your baby sleep questions. Okay, a lot of parents ask me about naps because they want a longer nap so that they can either take a nap themselves or get something done. And it's very normal for babies, especially in the first few weeks and months, to take short naps, frequent naps, feed, nap, and it can be hard to get anything done. So I totally get that. As babies get older, they will take longer naps and less frequent naps. You can help them along to some degree if you say, okay, I really would like one long morning nap, one long afternoon nap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep baby up and keep baby entertained so that they're a little bit more tired. I'm also going to make sure they're really well fed, maybe even topping them off. And then I love swaddling. So I say swaddle baby, then feed them to sleep, and then lay them down already swaddled so you don't have to jostle them. Those are a couple ideas that often help to make naps a little bit better in those first few months. Parents often want to know if they can give melatonin to their child or infant because they can't get them to sleep well and they're just desperate for sleep. And what I do is I talk through with parents, here's how to start a good bedtime routine. Here's how to put baby down consistently. Here's how to put toddler down consistently. And here's how long you expect it to take. And I go through this in my course because a lot of parents feel like they just don't know what to do and they think that melatonin is the answer, or their sister-in-law told them you just got to do melatonin. I can't say that ever under the age of 3 have I ever told a parent to get melatonin for their child or give it to them. I can't say even under the age of 4 or 5 that I routinely would suggest melatonin, except for the very special circumstance. So it's more about routine, it's more about consistency and breaking bad habits rather than turning to melatonin. Sleep regressions are so common, and I talk with parents all the time in my practice and online on my Instagram and everything like that about sleep regressions because it feels like they're always going through a sleep regression. And sometimes they are, sometimes they're just developmentally advancing, sometimes they have a tooth coming in or an ear infection or a cold. Whatever the reason that your baby that was sleeping better isn't, what I would do is be consistent with your bedtime routine, expect that the regression or progression or leap or whatever you want to call it will pass, and have a consistent way that you put them down. Ideally, you feed them, you cuddle them, you sing to them, and then you put them down drowsy but awake so that they can learn to fall asleep on their own. And there's ways to do that involve crying. There's ways that do that without crying. But once we get through those sleep regressions, then we can get back to our good sleep. The other thing I want to say about sleep regressions is it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean your toddler or infant is doing anything wrong. It's a normal thing that happens throughout infancy and childhood to have sleep regressions. And it doesn't mean that we need to throw out the old playbook and find a new one. Usually what we can do is just keep doing what we're doing, maybe add another overnight feeding if they're an infant and they seem hungry or they're going through a growth spurt, maybe give them Tylenol or ibuprofen if they're 6 months or older, if they're seeming fussy and have a tooth coming in or are sick or something like that. But keep doing what you're doing, realizing that it will be short-lived and that then you can go back and keep the same playbook going forward. Babies can sleep through the night when they can roll over to sleep on their belly on their own. If you put baby down on their back in a safe sleep environment, meaning no blankets, no pillows, no bumpers, no stuffed animals, no nothing else, and he rolls over to his tummy and wants to sleep that way, leave him. You don't have to constantly be flipping him over or watching the monitor or worrying. But what you always do is put your baby down on their back in a safe sleep environment. And if they roll over onto their tummy, which most babies prefer once they can do it, then it's fine to leave them. Okay, shifting to an earlier bedtime is much easier than trying to get them to sleep in later. Shifting to an earlier bedtime, if your child or infant is napping, wake them up a little bit earlier. So we have an earlier time where we're waking up and then a longer stretch between our last nap and going down to bed, and then incrementally work it back, maybe 15 minutes every other night or every 3 nights or something like that, to the time that you want. Maintain the same routine and they will quickly adapt to that so that you can move them up. Our kids, we have 12-year-old as our oldest and 9-month-old as the youngest, and they all go to bed at 8 or 7:30. They don't all fall asleep at that time. The older ones stay up and read, but everybody goes to their room, lays down. We do bedtime books and stories and cuddles and prayers and all those things at 7:30 for everybody, and it is amazing. I teach in my Mighty Sleepers course that most babies can sleep through the night by 6 to 9 months of age. Now, some will do it sooner, and we shouldn't brag if that's one of us, or your friends will be throwing eggs at your windows trying to wake your baby up. But the majority of babies can go to either one nighttime feeding or no nighttime feedings by 6 to 9 months of age. What this takes is consistency and practice. And practice means putting them down drowsy but awake whenever possible so they can work on that skill and get better at sleeping without being fed, rocked, or cuddled for falling asleep. And then consistency means preparing your baby, saying, this is what we do before bed to get them ready for bed each night, and being as consistent as possible with that. It's very normal for your baby to have early morning awakenings and then doze back off and go back to sleep and then wake up a little bit later. And oftentimes these are the best ones to try and just let baby self-soothe or let them, work through it on their own. Turn the baby monitor down so you don't hear every little noise that they're making, and see if they'll go back to sleep on their own, because oftentimes they will. Now, if it's one thing where you're like up and you can't do anything else, and you're going to be up for the day, if you can't get them to quiet down and you want to go and feed them, go for it. No big deal. Go in and feed them so that you can get back to sleep and baby can get back to sleep. But oftentimes these are ones where it's easy to skip them and they'll quickly grow through them, so it's not an issue anymore. The entire reason that I created my sleep training course was for parents who want to enjoy their baby more, because it's much easier to enjoy parenthood when you're getting good rest and your baby is getting good rest. So I totally get it that as sleep patterns change, it throws a wrench into everybody's system, not just babies. And so what I think as far as creating a routine is have a really consistent bedtime routine, meaning we do the same sort of things. We do jammies, we do bath time if it's bath night, do jammies, read a story, final feeding, and then put them down awake on a consistent basis so that they can practice. That doesn't mean you have to let them cry it out, but then put them down consistently awake to let them practice. And quickly they will get into the habit of falling asleep on their own. And then when they wake up throughout the night, they'll go back to sleep on their own. That is really the key to a consistent routine that makes for predictable sleep patterns. And one last thing that I'll say on that is that once your baby learns I can fall asleep on my own, then really quickly she'll learn I can go back to sleep on my own. Because once we've acquired that skill, then it's really easy to connect those sleep cycles together. Otherwise, every time baby goes through their sleep cycle, they wake back up and then they need to be fed or rocked or cuddled back to sleep again. They go through a sleep cycle, they wake up again, and it just continues throughout the whole night. Once they can fall asleep on their own, then they'll connect those sleep cycles really quickly thereafter, and they'll wake up when they're hungry, but they'll keep sleeping and won't wake up at all or need to be anything the rest of the night. And it makes a huge difference for families once that skill is acquired. So focus on that. Even if it means overnight while we're going through this, we just feed baby so we can all get back to sleep faster. Totally fine while you're working through sleep issues. Most babies can start sleeping for longer stretches, like 5 hours plus, by 4 months of age. And most babies by 7 to 9 months of age can sleep through the night. So by 4 months of age, I would anticipate that you're able to get longer stretches and down to 1 or 2 overnight feedings. If you're not there, it might be that your baby's just not quite ready developmentally. It might be that they're hungry and are used to getting a lot of calories at nighttime. It might be that they're just in the habit of waking up throughout the night and being fed or cuddled or rocked back to sleep, in which case we can start to put consistent habits in place. That doesn't mean you have to let them cry it out, but consistent habits in place of we're putting our baby down to practice drowsy but awake, drowsy but awake. And over time, he'll learn I can fall asleep on my own, I can go back to sleep on my own, and I can sleep for longer stretches. The last thing I'll say is don't despair if your baby is not sleeping as good as your sister-in-law or your friend or the person on Instagram. Very normal to have difficult stretches, and people don't brag much when their baby is having a really tough time sleeping and parents are just exhausted and miserable.